The rain had started just before midnight, the kind that fell straight down, cold and heavy, turning concrete into glass and shadows into traps. The base slept in pieces, some buildings dark, others glowing faintly with red security lights. Somewhere beyond the motor pool, generators hummed like distant insects. She walked alone. Her name, on paper, was Petty Officer Second Class Elena Ward. That was the name stitched onto her fatigues, the one the paperwork said belonged to a quiet transfer who'd arrived 3 days earlier. No ribbons that stood out, no reputation that preceded her, just another new girl, dropped into a world that already had its hierarchy carved in stone. Heads turned as she passed, some with curiosity, most with amusement. "Hey, new blood," one of the men muttered as she crossed the yard. Laughter followed, low and sharp, like a blade dragged across metal. Elena didn't react. She kept her eyes forward, her pace steady. That alone irritated them. This place ran on unspoken rules. You tested the weak. You broke them early or they broke you later. And tonight, a group of operators had decided she'd been quiet for too long. They caught up to her near the K9 compound. The pens sat at the far edge of the base, deliberately isolated. Chain, link fencing topped with inward, curving razor wire, red warning signs bolted to every post. Military working, dogs authorized personnel. Only from inside one of the pens came a low, restless growl. Someone clicked their tongue. "Hear that?" Another voice laughed. "Dog hasn't eaten since this morning. Mean bastard." Elena stopped walking. 5 of them now, big men, confident men, faces half, hidden by shadows and rain, slicked helmets. One stepped closer, invading her space. "You don't talk much," he said. "That a problem, or just scared?" She finally looked at him. Calm, measuring, no fear in her eyes. That made it worse. "Relax." Another said, mockingly soothing, "We're just gonna show you how things work around here." Hands grabbed her arms, not panicked, controlled. Like they'd done this before. "Let go," she said. The words were flat, not a plea, a statement that earned her a shove. They dragged her toward the largest pen, the one with the reinforced gate, the one marked with extra warning labels. Inside, the dog slammed against the fence, teeth flashing, muscles rippling beneath a scarred coat. Its eyes locked onto movement instantly. One of the men leaned close to her ear and hissed, "Die now, bitch." Then they threw her in. The gate clanged shut behind her with a final, metallic echo that cut through the rain. For half a second, the world seemed to hold its breath. The dog lunged. It was massive, easily 80 pounds of coiled muscle and fury. Its snarl vibrated through the ground, paws tearing at the mud as it charged. Saliva sprayed from bared teeth. Training and hunger mixed into something lethal. The men outside the fence stepped back, grinning, adrenaline buzzing. "Jesus," one whispered, "this'll be quick." Inside the pen, Elena didn't scream. She didn't run. She planted her boots in the mud and turned her body sideways. Not square, not defensive. Her shoulders relaxed. Her breathing slowed. The dog closed the distance in seconds. At the last moment, just before impact, she moved, not fast, precise. Her hand came up, fingers snapping into a sharp, unmistakable signal. Down, the command cut through the rain like a gunshot. The dog skidded to a halt so hard its claws tore lines into the dirt. Inches from her legs it froze, muscles trembling, chest heaving, eyes still burning but no longer wild. Silence slammed into the space. The men outside the fence stared. "What the hell?" Someone muttered. Elena lowered her hand slightly, her voice calm now, almost gentle. "Easy, boy." The dog sat, perfectly. Rain ran down Elena's face as she reached out slowly, deliberately, and placed her hand on the dog's head. It leaned into her touch like it had been waiting for it all along. Outside the pen, one of the men took an unconscious step backward. Another swallowed hard. They hadn't thrown a victim into the dark. They had thrown her into her domain, and for the first time that night, fear changed sides. The silence after the command was louder than the dog's snarl had been. Rain drummed against the chain link fence, steady and relentless, but no one moved. Inside the pen, the massive military working dog sat perfectly still at Elena's side, chest rising and falling in controlled rhythm. Its ears were forward now, not aggressive, not submissive, focused, waiting. Outside the fence, 5 operators stood frozen like men who had just stepped on a landmine they couldn't see. That's not possible," one of them whispered. Elena didn't look at them. Her attention stayed on the dog, her hand resting firmly at the base of its neck where the muscle was thick and warm. She could feel the tension still coiled there, ready to explode if she gave the word. The animal trusted her completely, and that trust was not given lightly. She reached for the collar. The men flinched as the dog's head lifted slightly, eyes flicking to her face for confirmation. Elena gave a subtle nod. The dog relaxed again, tongue lolling just slightly, breathing steady. "You starved him," she said quietly. Her voice carried through the rain, calm but sharp enough to cut. No yelling, no shaking, just fact. One of the men scoffed weakly. "You don't know that." Elena finally turned her head toward them. The light caught her face now, revealing something they hadn't bothered to look for before. Confidence etched deep, not learned but earned. "I do," she said. "His feeding schedule is logged every 6 hours. He missed 2. Another man cursed under his breath. "How the hell would you?" She stood then, slowly, deliberately, bringing the dog up with her using nothing more than a subtle shift of posture. The animal rose in perfect sync, shoulder brushing her leg, eyes still locked on her. "That dog's name is Ajax," she continued, "Belgian Malinois, 4 years old, trained for patrol, apprehension, and scent discrimination. Responds to hand signals better than half the handlers on this base." One of them laughed nervously. This some kind of guess. Elena reached into her soaked pocket and pulled out a laminated card, holding it up against the fence. "K9 handler restricted access," the words stared back at them like a verdict. "Oh, shit," someone breathed. She clipped the leash to Ajax's collar, then turned and walked toward the gate. The dog followed, flawless heel, movements sharp and controlled. When she stopped, he stopped. When she looked, he looked. Elena unlatched the gate from the inside. It swung open. Every instinct in their bodies screamed to move back, to create distance from the animal that had nearly torn someone apart moments earlier. None of them spoke. She stepped out of the pen. Ajax sat instantly at her side, eyes forward, posture alert. "You ever been inside a dog pen with a hungry Malinois?" she asked them. No one answered. "It's not a joke," she said. "It's not a prank. It's a death sentence, if the handler isn't there." Her gaze moved from face to face, cataloging reactions: fear, shame, confusion. One of them looked angry, but even that anger was thin now, cracked by realization. "You think because someone's quiet, they're weak," Elena continued. "Because they don't run their mouth, they don't belong." She gestured subtly, and Ajax lay down, chin resting on his paws. "That dog would have ripped out a throat tonight if I hadn't been here." A long pause. "Yours," she added. The color drained from one man's face. A radio crackled somewhere down the yard, distant but unmistakable. Footsteps echoed from beyond the kennels, fast, purposeful. Someone had seen the lights. Or heard the gate. Elena straightened, shoulders squared now, not defensive but authoritative. "You violated K9 protocol," she said. "You endangered a military working dog, and you assaulted a fellow operator." One of them tried to speak. "Look, we didn't stop," she said. The word hit harder than a shout. Footsteps grew closer. A flashlight beam swept across the compound, catching the fence, the open gate, the dog at heel. "Everything okay here?" A senior voice called out. Elena turned toward it and raised her hand in a crisp, practiced motion. Not a salute, but close. "No, sir," she said clearly, "it is not." The men behind her said nothing. Ajax stayed still. And in that moment, every one of them understood the same brutal truth. They hadn't just underestimated her. They had exposed themselves. Dawn broke slowly over the base, pale gold light spilling across concrete, and steel like it was reluctant to reveal what the night had done. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and sharp, every sound clearer than it had any right to be. Boots struck pavement in measured rhythm as a small formation assembled near the K9 compound. No one spoke. The 5 operators stood in a line, hands clasped behind their backs, eyes forward. Their confidence was gone now, burned away by the long hours since midnight, hours spent waiting, replaying every second in their heads, realizing how close they'd come to something irreversible. Across from them stood Elena. She wore a clean uniform now, dry and pressed, her name sharp against her chest. Ajax sat at her heel, alert but calm, his presence solid and unmistakable. He was fed, watered, brushed. Whole again, the way a working dog was meant to be. Behind Elena, a small group of senior personnel gathered. Command staff, K9 unit leadership, a legal officer, faces carved from experience. These were people who didn't raise their voices because they never needed to. The base commander stepped forward. "What happened last night," he said, "was not hazing. It was not a misunderstanding. It was criminal negligence." The word hung in the air. One of the operators swallowed hard. Another clenched his jaw so tightly the muscle jumped. The commander turned slightly toward Elena. "Petty Officer Ward, you were assigned to this base under temporary transfer. Your handler qualifications were verified, but not announced." Elena nodded once. "Yes, sir. You deliberately allowed yourself to be underestimated." "Yes, sir. Why?" She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was steady. "Because dogs don't respond to rank," she said. "And neither do dangerous situations. I wanted to see how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching." A murmur moved through the group, quickly silenced. The commander turned back to the line of men. "And you gave her that answer?" He let the silence do the work. "You starved a military working dog." He continued, "You violated restricted access. You assaulted a fellow operator, and you would have caused a fatality if Petty Officer Ward had not been exactly who she is." One of the men broke. "He didn't mean," he started, then stopped himself, realizing too late how hollow it sounded. "Intent doesn't erase outcome," the commander replied. "Only luck did that, and luck is not a defense." He stepped back. The K9 unit chief moved forward next. Older, scarred hands, the kind of man who trusted dogs more than people. He knelt in front of Ajax, checked his posture, his eyes, his breathing. Ajax stayed perfectly still. "This dog is not a weapon," the chief said without looking up. "He's a partner. Anyone who treats him otherwise doesn't belong near him, or in this unit." He stood and faced the line. "Effective immediately," he said. "You are removed from operational duty pending full investigation." The words landed heavy. Careers didn't end with explosions. They ended like this, quietly, permanently. One by one, the operators were ordered away, escorted, their footsteps retreating down the concrete path. No insults followed them, no cheers, just the sound of boots and the knowledge that everyone watching understood exactly what had happened. When it was over, the yard felt empty. Elena remained where she was. The commander approached her again. "You could have reported them earlier," he said. "You chose not to." "Yes, sir." Why? She looked down at Ajax, then back up. Because people show you who they are when they think they have power, she said. Last night they showed you. The commander studied her for a long moment, then nodded. You'll be staying, he said. Full authority over K9 operations. Any objections will come through me. Understood, sir. He paused. You did well. Elena didn't smile. Later, as the sun climbed higher and the base returned to its routines, Elena walked Ajax along the perimeter road. Soldiers passed them and nodded, not exaggerated, not performative. Different now, respect without curiosity. At the edge of the compound, she stopped and let Ajax sit. She knelt beside him, resting her forehead briefly against his. Good boy, she murmured. Ajax leaned into her, steady and sure. Behind them, the base moved on. Missions would come, stories would fade, names would be forgotten, but one thing would remain. No one would ever look at the K9 pens, or the quiet woman who walked beside them, the same way again.